Renacci just came out, and also Moody's came out. The credit rating is going to come down if we don't do anything about the debt. And Renacci is saying that you're either going to have to raise taxes or you're going to have to make deep cuts in order to get the budget balance. That, to me, implies Social Security and Medicare cuts, the entitlement programs. What is your opinion on that?
Well, again, I'm going to take the same background that I've taken to I told you I operated 60 businesses. I took a government in Wadsworth that was bleeding deficits. We could have very easily raised taxes in Wadsworth. We didn't raise taxes. We balanced the budget and made a surplus and got a surplus by, number one, we froze expenses. We said, let's freeze expenses that are not necessary. So, a good example was first thing I would do in the federal government, I was push for a freeze in expenses other than military. All right, all discretionary expenses, a 5-year freeze, and I would make us live within that within that freeze. The other thing, Congressman Pence. I don't know how many people know who Congressman Pence is. Congressman Pence is a very good congressman, very conservative, fiscal conservative congressman. He is talking about a statutory limit on spending by the government of 20% of GDP. Now, somebody will say, where'd that number come from? Well, if you go back over the history of this country, we've only spent about 20% of the GDP over all these years. So now we're on track to get to 80% here real soon. So you don't need to raise taxes if you get your expenses under control, and that's where you got to start first.
So are you going to touch Social Security and Medicare, or just freeze it?
I think what you need to do is the same thing I did in Wadsworth. You freeze it, and then you start looking at areas that you can eliminate wasteful spending. Believe me, there's wasteful spending, and you got to start chipping away at it. That's got to be the first foremost. I mean, we reduced almost $2 million in the budget in the city of Wadsworth. That's an $80 million budget. We reduced $2 million. I guarantee you there's a lot more money to be found in that federal government.
And if you do all that, and it still needs to be cut, Medicare and Social Security?
Well, Medicare and Social Security need to be looked at. Let's face it, they're failing programs right now. You cannot continue on the pace you're going on with Medicare and Social Security with the funding mechanism we have. So we need to come up with a plan to eliminate going forward with a problem. We need to fix that problem. I'm not going to sit here and say you're going to eliminate it.
I want honesty. That's what I want.
Yeah. Well, the truth of it is, that's what the honest answer is. You have to be able to fix. You can't keep spending. Those two young kids over there, they're going to pay these bills. We're not going to pay them. We have to first get our spending in line. The federal government was formed basically for our freedoms, and most of these programs that we have, we need to take a very good look at, because some of them need to be pushed back down to the states. It was limited. The federal government was supposed to have limited powers. Today we're spending more money than we could, so we need to look at everything. Everything needs to be looked at.
When you're talking about cutting, do you have anything specific in mind that you're looking at? I can think of a couple offhand. Like the Department of Education and the EPA, there's a few out there that are not only expensive, but
Right.
they're also intrusive.
Well, the truth of it is, here's the way I would look at it. I agree with you. Somebody asked me, what do you think about the Department of Education? I think it should be pushed all back to the local level. All right. What do I think about the EPA? It should be pushed all back to the local level. But I would be lying to you if I said today we get in there and we just chop it out. I think everything's going to have to be a plan of taking it down, but stay committed to it. In other words, so what I'm trying to tell you, if elected on November 3rd or 4th, whatever the date is, I'm not going to go down there and say we need to eliminate those programs on November 5th. But I'm going to say we need to start looking at pushing those programs. We have an EPA department right here in Ohio, and we have an education department. We need to push everything back to the local level. So yeah, there's that kind of waste. I think there's waste in the IRS. I think there's all kind of waste out there that you can start chipping away at.
How do you deal with the government unions? You deal with GM unions. So how do you deal with the government unions that are increasing and the free enterprise unions are shrinking?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because you're exactly right. The unions are growing, and I think at some point in time, all of us together are going to have to deal with that problem by allowing. Look, John Bocherry is 100% backed by the unions. $880,000 is what was contributed to John Bocelli last cycle by the unions. You better believe he's going to go in there every year and support that. You need to
How are you dealing with GM union, by the way?
Well, I don't deal directly with the GM union, but I
Very
will.
powerful in GM.
Right. Well, they own General Motors.
Yes, exactly. That's my point. You have to deal.
Right. The government and the union actually own General Motors.
Exactly.
But here's what I believe we need to do. We need to look, I came from a union family. All right. That doesn't mean I believe. I can also tell you that if you go back to my hometown, it's done. It's gone. But I think we need to work together with the unions, and they have to understand that there are issues, and we got to get spending down, and they have to understand it too. But you got to put people in there who are willing to do that. You've got to put people in there. I mean, I can give you an example. We have a situation. I mean, if you look at my history, you'll know that I've been involved in a lot of businesses, but one of them was a union business. It was a very powerful union business because it had the NFLPA behind it, National Football League Players Association union. I had no problem going in there and saying, we can't go forward. We cannot go forward. And the union just has to understand that. You got to make tough decisions.
You know who has made the most trips to the White House since Buckwheat's been in?
I know. I know.
You know who?
Have you?
The service workers union.
Yes, I know.
You know who? Yeah. Because let's make the deal again. Isn't it?
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree. And Soros has been there a number of times too. I think you had a question.
I am.
If you can make one particular political document or statement of opinions your standard of policy as a congressman, what would it be?
I think that the simplest thing I could tell you is fiscal responsibility is a necessary to running an appropriate government.
But like what? Okay, so but what if there was like a political document that could sum up your policy?
Give me an example. I'm not sure. I really don't know what you're asking. What's that?
What about the Constitution?
Oh, well, I believe in the Constitution, if that's what you're asking me. I thought you meant some kind of other document. I'm a firm believer in the Constitution. We need to get back to the Constitution. Again, you heard me say, all the things you hear me saying, limited power. The federal government was given limited power. We need to get back to that. We, the people, we need to take our government back. Whose fault is it that Congress is going in the direction it's going?
It's our fault.
That's right.
We didn't vote
It's our fault. Whether you voted for Bocelli or not, it's all our faults. And here's the reason I keep saying that. Who do we put in Congress? We put guys who have... But look at what we do. We take a guy who's run 6 times, never won, but he's got the 4 times. He's got the credentials, and we put him in to run for president, which was McCain. If you think about it, we are our own enemies. And today, we put people into Congress who have no life experiences. We put people into Congress who have never balanced a paycheck, never balanced the business books, never done any of that. We put them in Congress. It's our fault. So we need to fix it, one congressman at a time. This district needs to step up and say, I'm not going to do what we did in the past. I'm going to move forward and elect somebody who I know doesn't need the job, but I also know has balanced the budget, believes in the Constitution, believes in limited government, believes in less taxes, but also has lived by it for the last 27 years. And with me, you have that. But it's our fault.